Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I assure you, we do intend to feed you in as much as we are not letting you move about. I'm assuming that the person may have had some difficulty getting in the building. I don't know. But I did want to do a little bit of work in the meantime because I know that in as much as we are sequestering you, every minute counts, and every minute that we waste is a time away from your family. So I don't want to do that. With that being said, is the state ready to proceed?
The state is ready, Your Honor.
Defense counsel, are you ready?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you would, please raise your right hands to be sworn. All of you. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that in the case of the state of Texas versus Amber Guyger, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay. You may put your hand. You're very quiet. That's the only time you get to talk. Okay? From this day forward, or from this time forward, you get to listen and observe. Okay? And as soon as I'm notified that your food is here, I will take a break and allow you to have lunch. And thank you for your patience with me. That being said, Mr. Hermes, would you please arraign the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm going to read you the true bill of indictment. This puts you on notice of the elements that the state has to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt, and it makes the defendant formally aware of the charges against her. True bill of indictment. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Dallas County, state of Texas, duly organized at the July term AD 2018 of the 194th Judicial District Court for said county, upon its oath do present in and to said court at said term, that Amber Guyger, hereinafter called defendant, on or about the 6th day of September 2018, in the county of Dallas, state of Texas, did unlawfully then and there, intentionally and knowingly cause the death of Botham John, an individual, hereinafter called deceased, by shooting the deceased with a firearm, a deadly weapon, and further did unlawfully then and there intend to cause serious bodily injury to Botham John, hereinafter called deceased, and did then and there commit an act clearly dangerous to human life, to wit, by shooting the deceased with a firearm, a deadly weapon. It did thereby cause the death of Botham John, an individual, against the peace and dignity of the state, signed by the foreman of the grand jury.
And to that charge, what is your client's plea?
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client, Amber Guyger, is not guilty.
Thank you. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state and the defense have the opportunity to make an opening statement to you. The opening statements are not facts. They are simply an overview of what each party believes the evidence may show. With that being said, will the state make an opening argument?
We will, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say before I begin, on behalf of the District Attorney's Office and this dedicated team of prosecutors, and even more importantly, on behalf of the family of Botham John, Allison, Bertram, Brant, Elisa, and the rest of the family, we sincerely thank you for your service in this particular case. Now, the state of Texas, we've been waiting to present our evidence to a Dallas County jury for more than a year now, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I want to introduce the complainant to you. This is Botham Shem John. By all accounts, Bo was a wonderful, decent, kind man. On September the 6th of 2018, Bo was 26 years old, and he was sitting inside his apartment, the sanctuary of his own home at the Southside Flats. He was doing no harm to anybody, which was his wife. As a matter of fact, the evidence is going to show you that he was sitting in his living room in shorts and a t-shirt, watching TV, eating a bowl of vanilla ice cream. What any one of us would have been doing. When all of a sudden, Amber Guyger comes through his front door, uninvited. The light from the hallway must have flooded his apartment. The noise from the door must have scared him to death. As Bo was trying to get up off the couch to find out what this intruder is doing coming into his home, she is leveling off her gun, having acquired her target. and she shoots at him twice. No opportunity for de-escalation. No opportunity for him to surrender. Bang, bang, rapid, double tap. One of these bullets, we don't know which one hit him. We know there were 2 shots. One of them landed where it was aimed. The other one goes past Bo, goes through his back wall and into the darkness of the city behind. Thank God nobody else was hurt, because it's all residential behind there. The other bullet takes a very remarkable downward course, which is going to be indicative of the trajectory, and that's going to be very important. It's Bo in the chest just above his left nipple. The path of that bullet goes down into his heart, does absolutely devastating damage. Goes through his lung, goes through his stomach, goes through his intestine, until it finally comes to a rest in what's called the psoas muscle, which is halfway between his stomach and his back, in a dense pack of muscle. This path is very revealing because it is consistent with the fact that Bo was getting up from his seated position and facing the door as Amber Guyger was coming into his home. The only other reasonable position that would explain that kind of a path is equally as innocuous for Bo. It would place him in a cowering position, hiding behind a 3-foot wall, a few feet in front of him, that separated him from the shooter. Now, the effect of this bullet was catastrophic. Bo had, as in medical examiner parlance, had a couple of steps of purposeful movement left in his body before he fell to the ground. And there he lay, on his back, in his home, bleeding to death, alone with his killer. So you might be asking yourself, as did we, how does Amber Guyger come to be standing over the dying Botham John, an unarmed man in his own apartment, having just shot him? Well, in order for us to get that answer, we began to work right away, reconstructing her day on September the 6th. So, we're going to get into that in a second, but I'm going to tell you the short answer is simply this. In the last 10 minutes of Bo's life, Amber Guyger made a series of unreasonable errors and unreasonable decisions and unreasonable choices. The kind of choices and decisions that only she could have stopped the errors from happening again and again and again, and she didn't. And for her errors, for her omissions, Botham paid the ultimate price. September the 6th, 2018 for Amber Guyger started pretty much like any other Thursday. She lived in the Southside Flats apartment, the same apartment complex as Bo. She lived in apartment 1378. He lived in apartment 1478. She was on the 3rd floor. Bo was on the 4th floor. One right on top of the other. Based on the data we have available, it looks like she was up around 7 a.m. Her work starts at 8. She had moved into this complex about 2 months before. At the time, she was assigned to the crime reduction team of the Dallas Police Department, a 5-year police veteran with the Dallas Police Department. She gets into work shortly before 8. She gets her body cam on, and her usual hours for work are 8 to 4 p.m. Now, it's not unusual at all for members of the CRT team to be working overtime. You're going to hear from the evidence that it's uncommon in police work for officers to work long hours. They receive the training, hopefully they're in the physical condition, and they got the mental acuity to do that job. She had proven her worth. That is actually a very distinguished position for her to have made it onto the CRT team. Now, they already know, this team, that there's a very good chance that overtime on this particular day is going to happen. And it's not like overtime like what we have to face, where we dread it, Officers often seek out overtime opportunities because the pay is very lucrative. Amber Guyger was one of them. On this particular day, they know because SWAT has approached the team and said that they want to go in and arrest some robbers. And they've asked for the help of CRT. And so sure enough, this plan becomes a reality. So for the most part, in the morning of September the 6th, Amber Guyger and her partner, Martin Rivera, they're trying to lay low so that they don't get into something that will make them not be able to contribute. Around noon, they meet at the central substation where they're briefed by SWAT on who's going to do what. About 1 o'clock p.m., Amber Guyger and the rest of her CRT team are out on Elsie Faye Higgins Road in a perimeter capacity when SWAT goes into the home and does in fact arrest, I believe it was 3 individuals, notorious robbers. Good job to the police. Thank God no one was hurt on their end or on the citizens' end. 3 people taken into custody. Again, Amber Guyger and the entire CRT team, they weren't in the home, but they played a valuable role in making sure no other cars or people came up on the scene. Right around 2:15 p.m., CRT was asked to transport those 3 prisoners to Dallas Police Department so that detectives can interrogate those individuals and get evidence against them so that they can be prosecuted. Ladies and gentlemen, that is common police practice, not just with the Dallas Police Department, but every police agency in this jurisdiction. When you have a person who is suspected of being part of a crime or being the criminal who actually committed the crime, those individuals are arrested, they're put in handcuffs, they're put in police cars, they're taken to the police department, they're interrogated, and they're put in jail. Except for, as it turns out, police officers. Police officers don't get treated like that. And we're going to talk about that more at trial. So from about 2:30 until 7:45, the CRT team is at Dallas Police Headquarters while the detectives are interviewing these suspects. Let me talk to you about what that's like. Because here's the point that I'm going to make. Amber Guyger worked a long shift that day. She worked a 13-and-a-half-hour shift. But I want you to understand, she wasn't laying asphalt. That's a hard job too. Being a police officer is a hard job. But I don't want to give the impression that she was running around chasing criminals all day long. Most of the day she spent at the Dallas Police Headquarters. It's an office building, like any office building that we're all familiar with. Climate controlled, food, TVs, break rooms, computers, allowed to play on your phones, text, call. Now, her job, and the job of any officer who is sitting on a prisoner, they need to sit outside the interview room and make sure those prisoners don't act a fool. So it can be dangerous. I take nothing away from that, and I give them their credit. On this day, however, apparently nothing went wrong. It looks like the interviews were conducted safely. Everybody got to go home. But she was there until about 7:45 p.m. After those interviews were over, 4 of the members of the team, one person had to leave, Martin Rivera. He elected not to partake in all of the overtime because he had some sort of an event that he wanted to go to. He was allowed to go. 4 of the members end up taking the 3 arrested individuals to Dallas County Jail, the building that's right behind this one. That also is kind of a mundane job of just kind of transferring your prisoner from the police department to the county sheriff. The prisoners were taken into custody. Amber Guyger and the 3 remaining members of her team did their police reports. They got their arrest approved, and by about 9 p.m., she was heading home. Another member, remember I told you it was 5 to begin with, then it turned to 4 when Martin Rivera left. Now it's down to 3 because Officer Bruce, another member of CRT, he had the opportunity to work an off-duty job. If you'll recall, I said overtime is a very lucrative position. Off-duty jobs pay even more. So he took advantage of that and left. The 3 of them, Guyger, Hellengard, and I believe McPherson, they leave the jail. They head back to the Southeast Patrol Substation in Pleasant Grove. She gets back there shortly before 9:30. She docks her body-worn camera in the recharging station, and she fills out her overtime card. Her overtime card is going to be admitted into evidence. Now, it is going to say that she wrote it down, 8 until 9:45. That's not accurate. She worked 8 until 9:30, It's not a big deal. I just pointed out because it is a difference, and I don't want you to think that we're misrepresenting anything to you. Apparently, it's common practice to add in an extra 15 minutes in case they have to remove gear from cars. She didn't do anything untoward, but in fact, she left about 9:30. As she's leaving the substation at 9:30 p.m., she sends a message, a text message. Actually, it's a Snapchat message with a text associated with it to her partner, Martin Rivera. And she says, "Want to touch?" So I think it's important for me to take a moment and let you know something else. Amber Guyger had been with CRT about 1.5 years. Most of that time she worked with Martin Rivera. Their relationship was more than just professional. For about the last year, they had been intimate. And that relationship kind of ebbed and flowed. Coming upon more recently into September, it looks like that intimate part of their relationship was kind of ramping back up. But we know from the text messages, starting at about 5:55 p.m., Martin had already left. Remember I told you he had an event to go to? Starting about 5:55 p.m., they begin a text exchange. She's sitting on the prisoner at headquarters. He's wherever it is that he is. And a text exchange begins. This is just a sample. I need you to know this. They were talking multiple times throughout the evening by text, by Snapchat, and by MMS messages. I can't show you the images that they were sending back and forth to each other because the Snapchat application actually deletes those as part of its programming. I also can't show you the MMS images that were sent over her phone because they were deleted a day or two after this particular offense, and we were never able to recover them. But here's a select portion because I think it's very important for you folks to know that after a 13.5-hour shift, Amber Guyger did not have plans just to go home and crash or take it easy. There were plans that particular evening. Plans that were hatched about 5:55 between her and Martin Rivera. He writes to her, "When can I come over?" She replies, "You can come over after this." Referring to an image that had come across earlier. She indicates to him, "Super horny today too." He replies, "Me too." Then there were a bunch of other conversations going on throughout the night. He was checking in with her every 1.5 hours, and then she lets him know at 9:29:06. She sends him a text letting him know that she's barely walking out of the police station, followed by this indication, "Do you want to touch?" All right. By implication, clearly, we believe that there was some event, some date, whatever you want to call it, planned for after this call was over, based on their conversation that was exchanged with text. At 9:38 p.m., Martin Rivera calls Amber Guyger's phone and they begin a 16-minute and 44-second telephone conversation. She is talking to Martin Rivera on the phone from the substation all the way till she gets to her apartment complex, and even while she parks in the garage. She actually goes into the garage, a controlled, gated environment, and we know that she actually pulls over. She doesn't go and park. Whatever the conversation was with her and Martin Rivera required her to pull off the lane of traffic in her parking garage and give him full attention. Maybe she had to write something down, maybe it was an intense conversation. What we know is that she pulled off. Now, Martin Rivera recalls this conversation simply being about her filling him in on the details of what happened after he left. All right? That's what he recalls it being. I submit to you there was something much more about that conversation. Because prior to that conversation, Amber Guyger was able to effectively do her job all the way until she left. When she got to the police station, she was able to effectively put her body cam up. She was effectively able to put in her overtime card. She was effectively able to get into her car, drive away, carry on a conversation, find her way home, take her gear in, put her gear out. She was operating like a normal person. After this conversation with Martin Rivera, there is a marked difference. That conversation ends at 9:55:21. At this point here, she gets back into the lane of traffic. But what's important? So I'm fixing to go through some of the stuff that happens in a short period of time after that. At 9:55:21, Botham has less than 3 minutes and 44 seconds to live. What happens in this 3 minutes and 44 seconds? Amber Guyger fails to park on the floor that she's supposed to. She drives up to the 4th floor and she parks there instead. That can happen. And I'm going to tell you folks, I'm not trying to be nitpicky. Any number of these things in isolation can be explained. It's a cumulative total in the comparison of her respective attentiveness before and after this call. She parks on the wrong floor. She actually backs into a parking spot in the parking garage on the 4th floor. From her vantage point where she is parked, all the way until she gets out of her truck, she drives a white Dodge pickup truck, and all the way forward until she walks into a skyway that connects to the apartment complex. You can see it's an open air garage. You can see the elevation 180 degrees around. You can see the roof line of the apartment complex that you don't see from the 3rd floor. It is a completely different perspective. She fails to recognize that. Just like she fails to recognize that she's parked on the 4th floor. She then enters, she goes past a skyway that is also open right to her left and right, where she could look if she chose to, either side, and see, this isn't right. She either doesn't do that or it doesn't register either. She has a key fob that will allow her access to anywhere in the apartment complex. She uses that to walk into the 4th floor hallway. She has to go down 2 very long hallways now in order to get to what she thinks is her apartment. But in fact, she's walking towards Bo. It's a long walk. For someone as young and fit as her, maybe a minute or 2. But a minute or 2 is actually a long time for you to keep on missing repeatedly obvious signs that something is not right. She walks past 16 different apartments and fails to register the number 4 on any single one of them. Next to the door of this apartment complex, there's a lighted sign. And on the lighted sign is the apartment number. It's a little bit different than most apartments. Everyone that I've lived in growing up, they always have the numbers on the door. But she lived there for 2 months. She knew where the apartment numbers were located. And she walked past 16 of those without recognizing. Well, maybe the explanation for that is she doesn't look straight ahead when she's walking. Maybe she looks down. All right? There are floor mat differences. Not major, but enough that you would notice that something isn't right. As she gets to the end of the 1st hallway, there's a sharp left turn. On the 3rd floor, Miss Bly, a neighbor of hers, who lives in that corner apartment, she's got this really pretty decorative planter. It's big. It's tall. It's obvious. At least twice a day, you would think, for the last 2 months, Amber Guyger has walked past that decorative herb. And on this particular evening, it's not there because she's on the wrong floor. Doesn't register. Whatever is on her mind after that conversation has consumed her attention entirely. And she's missing obvious things. She then goes down the rest of the hallway because then she turns left. And she's walking up on Bo's apartment, 1478. And this is the one I really want y'all to hear. Amber Guyger has no floor mat in front of her door. Amber Guyger has nothing but the concrete floor. Gray concrete floor that looks like the rest of the floor. Botham Jean wanted his apartment to be very noticeable. And he took steps to make sure that happened. In front of Botham's apartment is this extremely obvious bright red floor mat. Right in front of his door. I want to reiterate. Amber Guyger had no floor mat. She walked right up and stepped on top of this as she entered and placed her key fob into the deadbolt lock of Botham Jean's home. Now, Unfortunately for Bo, it would seem that he didn't lock his door when he got home that night. We even recognize that it is a possibility that that heavy metal door, when it shut, hit the plate and may have not actually seated, so that you could actually just push the door open. But we know for a fact he didn't lock the door. Not that he should have to, but on this particular occasion it sure would have been good had he done it. Now, one of two things happened. Either Amber Guyger immediately assumed that there was an intruder inside what she thought was her apartment, and she decided to go in and engage. Or number two, she completely failed to recognize the reality that she locked her door that morning. And like everything else, she just keeps on going on, missing all these clues. And she enters into Bo's apartment. Once she enters into Bo's apartment, and she sees him, because she definitely saw him because she shot him exactly where she's trained to shoot an individual. Either she thought there was an intruder before, or once she recognized there was what she thought was an intruder after she entered, she departed from her training and her orders as a Dallas Police Department police officer. Their orders and her training are that if you come across a person that is inside of a habitation, like a burglar, if you have the opportunity to safely do so, you are to take a position of cover and concealment and contain that individual and call for backup. These rules are made and designed primarily because that maximizes the safety of the police officer. Incidentally, it also maximizes the safety of the person on the other side of the door. She didn't do that. She makes entry into Bo's apartment. Either she shot him so quickly that she wasn't able to perceive, or she continued to not perceive the fact that his apartment is decorated very differently than hers. She has a huge table, like a half table, I would call it a baker's rack, that is right in her line of sight as that door opens. Bo has nothing like that. God bless Bo, but he was messy. His apartment was cluttered, the whole cabin, the kitchen counter, covered with stuff. Hers is very neat. And it's not just the sensory details that she's failing to notice unreasonably. She's missing other sensory clues as well. Bo smoked marijuana. His sister's going to talk about why. He does it in his home. His home smells of marijuana. Hers presumably doesn't. She fails to recognize that. All of these things that she's aware of, she just doesn't let them get here. And that failure cost Bo his life. So now Bo is lying, bleeding to death on his floor. She shot him. She calls 911. I'm going to play that 911 call for you. And initially, I felt sympathy for her. And you may too. That's fine. Understand this. You're hearing one side of the story. And you're hearing an unchallenged story. But I think that 911 call is going to be important. Because I think when you listen critically to what she is saying, you are going to hear that she is as concerned or more concerned about how this is going to affect her than this poor guy on the floor next to her. I think this 911 call is going to do two other things that are vitally important. Number one, there had not yet been an opportunity for her to embellish her story. It was too fast. There had not yet been an opportunity for her to think of how I could state what happened in better light for me. And in that 911 call, she tells the call taker exactly why she shot both of them. She said, I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment. I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment. No threat. No recognition of danger. For Amber Guyger, mere presence of someone in her apartment that she thinks is hers means he has to die. And she executed that plan perfectly. She doesn't one time say, he was coming at me. She doesn't one time say, he had a weapon. She doesn't one time say, he was scaring me. He made me fear for my life. None of that. And that's when she would have said it. The reason is because it didn't happen. She shot Bo because she thought he was in her apartment. And that's it. It wasn't like she didn't have the time to say it. Had there been more to the story, she repeated 19 times, I thought it was my apartment. She had the time, and she clearly had the inclination to let the call taker know why she shot him. Not one time did she ever say Bo presented any threat to her at all. The second thing I think is vitally important about that 911 call is it lets you kind of know where she is at now. Because she is transitioning from wherever it is she was mentally to damage control. I think we can all agree on this. No matter what, in the 5 minutes that she's on that 911 call, as Bo is bleeding to death right down there on the floor, she should have been giving 100% of her attention to that man. 100%. Whether she'd be performing CPR, which she might have done, I don't know. Or even if she was just comforting him in his last moments. She should have made it her point of existence to take care of that man. But you're going to see from the record that at 10:02 p.m., while she's on the phone with 911, while she's in the room alone with Botham, she decides to send text messages to her partner. She writes to her partner, "I need you, hurry," at 10:02:25. And then again, she gets the phone, manipulates in such a way so she can send another text to Martin Rivera at 10:03:03 saying, "I fucked up." This is Amber Guyger thinking about herself. We also know that when the first responding police officers got there, Amber Guyger wasn't inside taking care of Bo. She was outside in the hallway waiting on them. She left that poor man alone in his apartment in his final moments. Incidentally, all of these texts I've shown you, and a whole lot more, were deleted off of her phone in the day or two after this offense was committed. It was only because we acted so quickly that we were able to preserve this bit of information to show you. Ladies and gentlemen, when we're done this trial, it is my hope and I have the conviction that we are going to have proven this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. That on September the 6th of 2018, Amber Guyger shot an unarmed man in his home who was doing no harm to anybody. And there will be nothing in law that you will find that justifies her in doing this. When that is the case, the state of Texas is entitled to a verdict of guilty. Because for this kind of crime, there must be a consequence. Thank you.
Will the defense make their opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you anticipate it to be as lengthy as Mr. Holmes'?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And I'm going to take a break and allow the jurors to have their lunch. They've been more than patient. And we will resume at 2 p.m. Promptly.
All right.
You all may be seated. Mr. Rogers, you may proceed with your opening statement.
May it please the court. Amber. Members of the jury. What is about to unfold before your very eyes is nothing short of an epic tragedy. A young man has died untimely. A young woman's life is forever altered. What you will see and hear and experience is the perfect storm of innocent circumstances that all came together. That all came together in the right way or the wrong way at the wrong time that led to this tragedy. Now, it's important to see where we are. The sensationalistic headlines of media clickbait, the false narratives that have been publicly pushed about this case are out there. You 16 people have sworn to us, and we have taken you at your word. We have faith in you, and we trust and abide that you will keep that oath, and that you will base your verdict on only what happens in this courtroom. We're going to spend days dissecting what happened in seconds. The state's case, as you have already seen and you get an idea, it was born with a rush to judgment. It grew and evolved into an obsession to win at any cost by any means. And we ask that you not get distracted by things that don't relate to what happened, to what truly happened. Reason and common sense is what we appeal to, and reason and common sense will clearly show you that on September 6, 2018, Amber Guyger firmly and reasonably believed that she was in her own apartment. Amber Guyger firmly and reasonably believed that she had confronted an intruder in her apartment. Amber Guyger firmly and reasonably believed that she had no choice, that she had no options but to use her gun to keep from dying. That was her firm and reasonable belief. All these other things that they try to get you to focus on, we want you to focus on what counts. We've waited 382 days to get our story out. And you are the people that we focus on. You are the people that count. So what we ask and what we rely on is that you focus on the facts and apply reason and common sense. Amber Guyger was born and raised in Arlington, Texas. She's still a young woman. She's overcome adversity in her life. She's learned to deal with adversity by being resilient and working hard. She went to high school in Arlington, to a very ethnically diverse high school. She was in the orchestra, and she was in an all-female mariachi band. Based on some adversity that she had faced early in her life, Amber learned that police officers help people. She learned that police officers help people in their lowest moments overcome things. And so she developed the seeds of a dream to become a police officer. And like Amber she knew the only way to get there was to work hard. She went to Tarrant County Junior College. She worked full-time in a department store while going to college. She researched police departments and realized you need college, you need university hours. And so she started going to the University of Texas at Arlington, majored in criminology, working full-time at TGI Fridays, trying to support herself and her dream. Eventually, in the summer of 2014, she graduated from the Dallas Police Department's Academy, class number 336. They give recruits, the rookies, a choice of where you want to go. Amber, based on what other officers had told her, wanted to go to the southeast section of Dallas. They send police officers are stationed, patrol officers are stationed in different sections. You have southeast, southwest, south central, northeast, northwest, central. Amber chose the southeast section because it's one of the most diverse regions in the city, and it allowed her to have the opportunity to help the most people. So she works in patrol at Southeast. She gets a reputation for being a hard worker, for always being willing and able to go above and beyond to get the job done. She knows how to talk to people. She knows how to empathize with people. She didn't become a police officer to hand out tickets. She became a police officer to arrest the bad guys and help the victims that truly needed them. Eventually, an opportunity came up for her to apply for an interview with the crime response team in the Southeast Subdivision, CRT for short. Now, CRT is a proactive unit. Patrol officers mainly are relied upon. They go from call to call to call. Hey, there's a burglary here. Hey, there's a domestic violence situation over here. They're running from call to call to call. Well, the CRT, they want them to be more proactive. So when citizens are calling, complaining about drug dealers in their neighborhood, when citizens and business owners are complaining that their businesses are being broken into, or the investigative units across the city have identified violent felons that they're looking for need to be arrested, they go to the CRT team and the deployment team. The deployment team, they're in plain clothes. The CRT team, like Amber, are in their uniforms and marked squad cars. She gets selected to be a member of this team. She and Thomas McPherson and William Bruce are the new members of the team, and they join Martin Rivera and Justin Hellengard, who are some of the more experienced members. Amber is drawn to Martin Rivera. He's one of the most experienced members of that unit. He's a hard worker just like Amber. He's got street smarts. She feels like she can learn from him. And so they partner up. And they work long hours together in spending a lot of time with each other in a squad car. We're talking a young 20-something female in her upper 20s with a more experienced guy who's good at what he does, and she falls for him. Does that have anything to do with what happened on September 6th? No, but we have to explain it to you. Is that evil for her to fall in love with a guy or fall and develop a relationship with a guy she's around all the time? No. It's a distraction, but we're explaining it to you, putting it in some context. So this unit works a lot of unpredictable hours. The unusual is the usual. The not routine is the routine. Many times they might have detectives that are looking for a group of aggravated robbers. There might be a murderer that they want them to help track down. There might be a child molester that needs to be arrested. So they get with CRT and deployment in that area of town and say, hey, help us find these people. And sometimes they have to go to work early, sometimes they have to stay late, and it's not because they like to get the money. The money they get rewarded for taking overtime, but sometimes it's just plain necessary. The child molesters don't wait, the murderers don't wait, the robbers don't wait. Let's get them arrested, and you might have to work past 4 o'clock. So it's not always an 8 to 4 job. You don't always know what your shift is going to be. On September 6, 2018, the days leading up to that, Amber and her unit were being tasked with helping track down a gang of violent robbers. Guns had been discharged in some of these robberies. These were poor people that they were preying on. These are people that can't just move out of the neighborhood. So they are relied upon, this team is relied upon to help these detectives track these guys down. And that's what was going on in the days leading to September 6th. From Sunday, when she worked her extra job at a church downtown, going into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and by the time she clocked out on Thursday, she had worked 40 hours from Monday through Thursday. 40 hours of differing intensity, but always in a uniform and always doing her job, whatever it was. So on September 6th, Amber was following her normal routine. Her normal routine is she goes to bed. She forces herself to go to bed around midnight. She can't sleep. She has trouble falling asleep constantly. She scolds herself because she blames herself, saying, I'm going to let down my team if I'm tired. And it takes her a while to fall asleep. After a couple hours, she falls asleep, and every day she wakes up at 5:30. Normally, she has her dog Ranger that she walks. Now, in July of 2018, Amber had moved into the Southside Flats apartments. Prior to this time, she had been a courtesy officer where you get a break on rent, but you're still always called upon to deal with the things that go on in the apartment. Hey, there's this guy down the hall, we think he's up to something. Hey, this person has beer at the pool. You're always having to deal with things like that. She moved in the Southside Flats. It was downtown. It was close to the police department. It was going on her own, and she wasn't going to be a courtesy officer. What she didn't know, and she didn't think about, and none of the tenants at Southside Flats think about, is that it's a confusing place. The parking garage, none of the numbers are clearly marked. You drive around by memory. You park by memory. You park by feel. When you get out of your car, you can take the time to look around and see, okay, is this the second floor? Is this the third floor? But most people don't. That's not reasonable. In fact, after this incident, the investigators interviewed and learned that 93 tenants had unintentionally parked on the wrong floor. 76 of those that lived on floors 3 and 4. When you get out of your car and you walk, there's no number that's posted on the entrance to the hallway. And so you have to go over to the elevator and look to see if you see the number 3, 4, or 2 that's a couple of inches high. Most people don't do that. That's why 92 people reported that lived in Southside Flats reported unintentionally walking to the wrong apartment on the wrong floor. 71 of those that lived on the 3rd and 4th floor, because the higher you go, the more confusing it is. Additionally, 46 tenants had gone to the wrong apartment, just like we learned that Amber Guyger has, and placed their key in the door. They must have ignored the potted plants or the decorative plans of their neighbors or the doormats, or didn't count. 38 tenants that lived on the 3rd and 4th floor reported doing the exact same thing. How is that unreasonable? How is that selfish and evil on Amber Guyger's part? So on September 6th, she wakes up at 5:30. She doesn't have Ranger because there was a plan for maintenance to come into the apartment. Ranger's a small dog, but she didn't want Ranger to accidentally get out or harass the maintenance guys. So she had taken Ranger to her mom's place. And so Amber, just out of routine, gets up at 5:30. She gets ready to go to work. Most of the time she would walk Ranger. And some things that Amber had noticed in the couple of months that she lived there was a lot of crime in that area. She followed the stats through work. She was interested in what was going on. There were car break-ins. There were homeless people that would somehow get past the gates and harass people. There were reports of break-ins in that area, in that apartment complex. So Amber was very aware, based on her job and where she lived, that it was, unfortunately, a high crime area. This is all going in her mind when she's living there on September 6th. She gets to work, or she leaves her apartment at about 7:23 a.m. It doesn't take long to get to the southeast substation, which is in the southeast sector off the Jim Miller. Doesn't take her long to get there. She gets to work early. She wants to be prepared. She wants to look at intelligence reports. She wants to plan the day so that by the time she hits detail at 8 o'clock, she's ready and raring to go. On that day, there was a plan to assist SWAT because they had finally tracked down some of these robbers in a house off of Elsie Faye Higgins. SWAT wanted CRT and deployment and a few patrol to watch the perimeter so that they could safely engage these robbers, get into the house, and arrest these people. The morning goes normally. Amber's riding with Martin. They follow their routine. They're looking for activity just like any officer would, but they're not running any special operations. They don't want to get into anything prolonged because their responsibility is to SWAT in this operation. At about 12:30, they go to Central and are debriefed of how this takedown is going to go. And a little while after that, they go to Elsie Faye Higgins and form a perimeter. When you're on the perimeter, you're on alert. Your head is on a swivel because you're protecting SWAT. They need to focus on these guys that are probably armed and they know are dangerous. And so SWAT has to focus on the house. So the CRT and the patrol, like Amber, they have to keep people out. And then once the operation goes down, they don't know how people are going to react. They could possibly have a violent offender coming at them from the other side. And so they're on alert. They're on full guard for whatever goes down. And that's what they do. They form this perimeter. They keep SWAT safe. Luckily, the operation goes as planned, and eventually Amber and Martin transport a suspect to jail. They have to transport him to headquarters and sit on him. They have to sit on these suspects. That's not the most intense part of the job, but it just adds to the day. The day that started at 5:30, the day that developed into patrolling the area and into an intense situation where you're making sure that your fellow officers and citizens. So it drags on. These suspects have to get interviewed. Then they have to take them to jail. And Martin leaves early. He has something else to do. So Amber and another CRT member transport a suspect to jail. Well, that's another long process. You have to go through the bookend process. You have to wait in line with them. You have to make sure that they don't act up. This is a aggravated robbery suspect who's probably not happy about where he's going. And so they have to be on guard that whole time. Eventually, Amber gets back to the southeast substation around 9:30. One of these texts that they didn't show you with Martin was, she says she's sleepy. She says, I'm sleepy. She had asked her supervisor for a day off the next day because she was so tired. She'd worked 40 hours in 4 days doing different responsibilities of a police officer. So in her mind, she was tired and she was going to go home and not have to go to work the next day. Now this speculation that her and Martin had a plan to hook up and be with each other that night is rank speculation. There is nothing to that, and there is no evidence of that. Her and Martin will tell you, they engaged in flirtatious banter all the time. The last time that they had been together sexually was well before this. Sometime in late 2017 was the last time, and we're in September of 2018. So they hadn't had a sexual encounter in months. So to say that it was ramping up is wrong. It's false. It's the opposite. It was ramping down. Amber was trying to move on. She's a 30-year-old female. The relationship with Martin wasn't going anywhere. They were good work partners, and she liked flirting with him. But she was looking for more stability, or for someone who was more available for her. And Martin Rivera will tell you, he has no reason to lie. There was absolutely no plans for him to meet up with her that night. He had never been to that apartment complex before this. He had never visited her there. He didn't know how to get there. He didn't have any plans that night. His plans were to take care of himself. He was going to work the next day. So don't let that distract you. What was going through Amber's mind was just, I'm going home. I'm done with my day of work. I'm exhausted and I'm going home. And that's what she did. Once she clocked out, once she docked her body cam, she left work. All the adrenaline, all the mundane task, everything was behind her, and she went in autopilot. You heard that Plano detective in Botham talk about how sometimes he drove home and didn't know how he got there. Many of you have done that same thing. You go on autopilot and you don't pay attention to everything, but somehow you get home. And so yes, Amber was on the phone with Martin, and they were talking about work things and having a conversation. And she gets into her apartment complex, and she drives, and she's not counting the floors, and there's no numbers. And she keeps driving, and she sees a spot, and she can't believe that there's a spot that's right by the entrance. And she takes it. Was that evil of her to do? Was it evil of her not to count the floors? Was that just a reasonable reaction to, oh my gosh, I found a good spot? She backs into the spot. It's facing the entryway. She doesn't know. She didn't walk over here to see what floor she's on. She just knows. It looks the same. It's dark outside. She didn't do a full 360 scan to see the skyline. She just knows everything looks the same. This is my floor. Just like 93 other people had done. She gets out. She has her gear. She has her heavy vest, her lunch pail, and her bag in her left hand, and she's walking to her apartment. She walks the same way that she always walks. She goes through the entryway. Again, there's no number. What you will see when you see pictures of this apartment complex is that there's not numbers on the door. There's not numbers right here. The numbers are in white lights that are up and to the left. Amber's 5'3", 5'3", 120 pounds. There's nothing in her eyesight level that indicates what floor she's on. She would have to stop and look up to see. But everything looks the same. The hallways look the same. She doesn't make a note of her neighbor's floor mats. She doesn't say that, 1373 has pineapples and 1363 has balloons. She doesn't note. No one notes floor mats. And no, perhaps she didn't pay attention to the decorative habits of Mrs. Bly to note that the planter wasn't out in front. But why would she? She's going home. She's worked a long day. She's tired. She's almost home. She's walking the same way she's always walked. It looks the same. The doors are the same. The lights are the same. And she gets to 1478. Something about the door of 1478 you need to know, and it is clear through the investigation, is that the way the strike plate, this metal portion of the door, was installed, it was effectively installed so it bows out. So when the temperature and the humidity are right, then the door doesn't always shut fully. It comes to a close, but it doesn't latch. So that when you push it, it opens. That's not Amber Guyger's fault. That's not an evil act on the part of Amber Guyger. It's unfortunate that that existed in 1478. Other circumstances. Botham John had gone to run an errand and had just got back at about 9:34. So when he walked in, he probably didn't check to make sure whether his door fully shut. It's not his fault. There's nothing he did for this to happen to him. It was just an unfortunate set of circumstances. Amber Guyger's fishing her keys out. She gets her keys out and she gets to the door, and the door looks like her door. She didn't look down at the floor mat. It's reasonable to say that if she looked down and saw a red mat, she would have thought, and then looked up at the numbers. To say that she was aware there was a red doormat and knowingly ignored it because she wanted to go into 1478 and shoot this man is preposterous. Amber Guyger was in autopilot. She got to the door and she put her key fob in, and in one motion, the door is opening. And it doesn't make sense because normally you have to turn the handle. And she's trying to process this as she's stepping into her apartment. And at the same time, I'm sure Mr. Jean is thinking, what is this person doing? Who is coming into my apartment? So he's confused. He's wondering what's going on. She's thinking, what is going on? Why is this man in my apartment? And she looks up, and he's standing up. And he's about 30 feet away from her. And I'm sure he's alarmed. But she's thinking, oh my God, there's an intruder in my apartment. And she's face to face with him. She's within 10 yards of him, and he starts approaching her. And she reacts like any police officer would who has a gun with confronting a burglary suspect. Keep in mind, this procedural distraction is just that, because procedures are in place when officers get a call for a burglary call. You have time. You have a plan. You have all these things going on when you're going to that call to plan for it. Amber Guyger was in what she thought her apartment when she was confronted with an intruder. And so she pulls her weapon. And she's expecting as soon as she displays her gun, this man, this intruder, is going to stop. And she can see his hands. It's dark in there. She's going from a well-lit hallway into a dark apartment. Her eyes are trying to adjust. She's got tunnel vision. She's not looking around to see if her little table is there. She's not looking around to see any landmarks. She's not ascertaining any of this because she has tunnel vision. She's in her apartment. My God, there's a man in my apartment, and he's big. He's twice her size. And he's coming at her, and she pulls her gun. And she starts to say, hands. But he drowns her out, and he's yelling, hey, hey! And he's 25 feet, and then he's 20 feet, and it's happening like this, and she has to make decisions. And there's this intruder, and I'm holding a gun, and why is he not stopping? Why is he yelling at me? Why is he coming at me? Why is my gun, the display of my gun, not working? He must have a weapon. He must want to kill me because I caught him burglarizing my apartment. And he's getting closer, and he's getting to 20 feet, and he's getting to 15 feet. And he's not stopping, and she's holding a gun, and she fires twice because she knows, at that time, she knows this man means to kill me. He broke into my apartment. He was all the way at the back of my apartment. I've displayed a gun. I'm wearing a police uniform. He didn't stop. He must have meant to kill me. And she fires her weapon. And the evidence, a reasonable deduction from the evidence, is that the two shots are in line with each other. She fires and there's some recoil, and the second shot goes at an upward angle. The reconstruction that the Texas Rangers did who investigate this, and the conclusions that they made were that Mr. John was 13 to 15 feet from the center of the doorway when he was shot. You'll see in the photos there's flip-flops there on the floor that he was likely wearing that represent a close approximation of where he was. And that's in the middle. That is closer to the counter. It's away from the couch. There is zero evidence. There is zero physical evidence of this preposterous scene where Mr. John is getting up and gets shot in the heart and somehow walks to the middle of the apartment towards the person that shot him and then collapses backwards. What is reasonably likely from the evidence and the angle of the shot is that Mr. John was confused. He didn't know who was coming, and he was going towards that person to say, hey, what are you doing in here? And he sees the gun, and he leans down and gets shot as he's coming towards her and falls back. And you'll see when arresting officers come, you'll see the position of his body, and you'll see that it is impossible for him to have been sitting where they say he was. The medical examiner is going to say, we don't do tests on, we don't shoot people in the heart and see how their body reacts. But it was a devastating injury that would have been rendered him incapable of much movement. This purposeful steps is pure speculation. What is more likely that the physical evidence shows is that he was coming towards Amber. He was probably 13 feet away from her, approaching her as an intruder in her mind when she shot him. And she fired twice, and she thought, oh my God, I just had to defend my life. And she approaches the body, and the adrenaline, the fear turns into horror as she starts processing, oh my God, that's not my table. I don't have that ottoman. Oh my God, that ironing board is not mine. Oh my God. It starts to dawn on her as she approaches Mr. John's body. What a horrible, horrible mistake she has just made. And she reacts by the first thing she can grab is call 911. She needs help. You hear her on the 911 call. I need help. I need EMS. She recognizes that. She sees where hear her say on the 911 call, hurry, please. You hear her say 22 times, I thought I was in my apartment. I thought I was in my apartment. She's trying to process this. They want to say how a 911 call should have gone, that she should have said everything that happened in that apartment. She has to claim self-defense in the 911 call, or it doesn't count. She wants help. She knows she can't physically help this man. She knows his best chance is for EMS to come. And she's talking to 911, and she says, I'm sorry. And she's talking in stream of conscience. And she knows that she's messed up. She knows she's made a tragic mistake. But it's not out of evil. It's not out of careless recklessness. It's not out of a criminal state of mind. It's out of life. It's out of human errors. It's out of all the things that people have done, and this accumulation of events that led to this awful, awful tragedy. And so she's on 911 and she's trying to process this. And hey bud, I'm sorry. And she starts realizing, I'm going to lose my job. I need a supervisor. She's going back and forth from cop to trying, just sheer panic of what she's just done. This woman that had worked so hard, that had overcome adversity in her life, that was 1 second felt she was in danger of her life, has realized she made a mistake. And you hear on the 911 call her trying to process that. And you hear on the 911 call the officers are struggling to get in there because it's so confusing. That apartment complex is so confusing that they can't find it. And so she runs out in the hallway and says, hey, here, I'm down here. And she does appeal to Martin. She does text Martin because that's her rock. That's who she's been in so many difficult situations with on the streets. She's trying to get help. She's trying to get help to Mr. John, and she's trying to get people there. She's not hiding behind anything. She's the one that's calling the troops to come to get her. And her actions show just a young woman that's just devastated, absolutely devastated by what just happened. Ladies and gentlemen, the discipline that you have to have in this trial is enormous, because they are holding Amber Guyger to an impossible standard. They're holding her and twisting and turning and making things that are innocent mistakes into evil acts. You'll hear from Amber. You'll get to know Amber Guyger. You'll get to know the hard worker, the young woman that worked her way to the crime response team and made a mistake. How awful and tragic, but innocent. And when you apply your reason, and when you apply common sense and the law of self-defense, it will be clear. It will be clear that the only verdict, the only justice in this case is to find Amber Guyger not guilty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.